The unheeded warning Commander Voltar's metal-reinforced boots echoed through the polished corridors of the Imperial Nexus, the central hub of the Zorthan Empire. His battle-scarred visage reflected dimly in the obsidian walls as he marched toward the Grand Council chamber. The neural implant embedded in his skull pulsed with a dull blue light, processing tactical data even as he prepared to deliver his urgent message. Behind him trailed Lieutenant Kree, his loyal second-in-command, nervously adjusting her ceremonial armor. "They won't listen," she whispered. "The High Command has already committed resources to the Earth campaign." "They must listen," Voltar growled, his voice gravelly from the vocal reconstructive surgery after the Mars outpost disaster. "Or thousands of our soldiers will die needlessly." The massive doors to the council chamber parted, revealing a semicircular room where 7 high generals sat elevated on crystalline platforms. Above them hovered Supreme Admiral Draylock, his 6 eyes narrowing at Voltar's approach. "Commander Voltar," Draylock's voice boomed across the chamber, "you have requested an emergency audience with the Imperial War Council, interrupting critical invasion preparations. This had better warrant our attention." Voltar stood at attention in the center of the room, his cybernetic eyes scanning the faces of each council member. Most wore expressions of impatience or thinly veiled contempt. "Supreme Admiral Honored Generals," Voltar began, "I come before you to formally request the postponement of Operation Earthfall. My first-hand experience with the humans indicates they pose a significantly greater threat than our intelligence suggests." General Zix, the youngest council member, scoffed audibly. "Commander, the humans are a pre-unification species. They haven't even colonized their own moon permanently. Their technology is primitive. Their military's fragmented. What possible threat could they pose to the might of the Zorthan Empire?" Voltar activated his neural implant, projecting holographic footage onto the central display. The images showed the smoking ruins of the Mars outpost, Zorthan soldiers retreating under heavy fire from what appeared to be lightly armored human forces. "This footage is from my deployment to their system 18 cycles ago. We established a covert outpost on their 4th planet to assess their military capabilities. My team consisted of 30 elite Imperial guards with advanced weaponry and tactical support." He gestured to the footage, which now showed humans adapting to Zorthan shield technology, modifying their weapons on the battlefield to penetrate the previously impervious barriers. "A small human reconnaissance team discovered our presence. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, they not only survived the initial engagement but adapted their tactics and technology during the battle itself. Of my 30 soldiers, only 7 of us returned." Admiral Draylock leaned forward, his expression darkening. "One skirmish doesn't constitute a pattern, Commander, and your team's failure doesn't justify delaying a full-scale invasion. With respect, Admiral, it's not just one skirmish." Voltar presented additional footage from subsequent encounters. "Humans possess 3 qualities I've never seen combined in any species across the 37 systems I've fought in." Voltar's cybernetic eye projected a tactical analysis alongside the battle footage. "First, they adapt with unprecedented speed, not just between conflicts but during them. Second, they fight with a unique combination of individual initiative and coordinated action. Most species excel at one or the other, never both simultaneously. And third, most dangerous of all, they learn exponentially." General Mardox, the Council's strategic analyst, studied the footage with greater interest than his colleagues. "What would you propose, Commander? The expansion into the Sol system has already been approved by the Emperor himself." "At minimum, a revised approach," Voltar replied. "Standard subjugation protocols will fail against humans. We should consider diplomatic integration rather than military conquest, or better yet, bypass their system entirely. There are countless worlds with greater resources and less resistance." "Diplomatic integration?" General Zix laughed, the sound echoing harshly through the chamber. "For a species that still wages war against itself, they require subjugation and enlightenment through force, like all primitive civilizations." Voltar felt his patience wearing thin. "The humans have a saying that seems particularly applicable. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I've studied their military history extensively. They have repeatedly overcome technologically superior forces through adaptation and sheer determination. Admiral Draylock slammed his fist against his platform. Enough. Your concerns have been noted, Commander. But Operation Earthfall proceeds, as scheduled. The Imperial fleet departs in 7 cycles. 20 legions will establish multiple planetfall zones simultaneously. The humans will be incorporated into the Empire within a standard quarter rotation. Voltar stood rigid, his artificial leg locking in place as his vital signs spiked with frustration. Then I formally request reassignment to the invasion force. If you will not heed my warning, at least allow me to help mitigate the casualties. The council members exchanged glances before Admiral Draylock nodded. Request granted, Commander. You will serve as tactical advisor to General Zix, who will command the primary assault force. Your first-hand experience may prove valuable after all. As the council session concluded, Voltar and Lieutenant Kree exited the chamber. General Zix intercepted them in the corridor, his tall, lithe frame blocking their path. You've embarrassed yourself today, Commander, he hissed, mandibles clicking with irritation. These humans are nothing more than another primitive species to be enlightened by Imperial rule. Voltar met the general's 4 eyes unflinchingly. Pride precedes downfall, General. I only hope your realization comes before too many of our soldiers pay the ultimate price. 1 cycle later, aboard the Imperial flagship Inevitable Victory, Voltar reviewed the invasion plans with mounting concern. The massive vessel orbited Triton, Neptune's largest moon, hidden from Earth's detection systems, but close enough to launch the first wave of the invasion force. Our primary objectives will be their military command centers and communication networks, General Zix explained to his assembled officers, gesturing to the holographic display of Earth. Primitive systems, but we will eliminate them to ensure planet-wide confusion during our assault. From his position at the back of the briefing room, Voltar finally spoke. The humans have demonstrated remarkable resilience to communication disruptions. During the Mars incident, when we jammed their transmissions, they reverted to pre-established failsafe protocols with minimal operational degradation. Zix barely acknowledged Voltar's comment. Noted, Commander, but backup systems will hardly save them from our primary assault forces. They call it degraded operations capability, Voltar continued undeterred. They regularly train for worst-case scenarios. Do not expect panic when their communications fail. General Zix's facial membranes flushed with irritation. Your pessimism is unwelcome, Commander. This operation has been planned meticulously based on comprehensive intelligence. Intelligence gathered by observers who have never engaged humans in combat, Voltar countered. Enough! Zix silenced him with a slashing gesture. The invasion proceeds in 12 hours. First-wave vessels will target their major military installations simultaneously. Second-wave forces will secure their governmental centers. The humans will surrender within days. As the command staff dispersed, Captain Jin, Zix's second-in-command, approached Voltar. Unlike her superior, she seemed genuinely interested in his insights. Commander, I'd value your perspective on what we might expect from human ground forces, she said quietly. Voltar activated his neural implant, displaying footage of human military exercises captured by Imperial surveillance drones. Notice how they train in all environments, desert, Arctic, forest, urban. They adapt their tactics to the terrain rather than trying to overcome it. He switched to footage of human special forces conducting hostage rescue operations. And this shows their ability to make split-second decisions with incomplete information. Captain Jin watched attentively. Impressive for primitives. But surely our technological advantage. Technology is a force multiplier, not a guarantee of victory. Voltar interrupted. The humans understand this better than most species I've encountered. They've repeatedly overcome technological disadvantages throughout their own history. What would you recommend? Jin asked. A measured approach, limited engagement zones. And most importantly, be prepared to adapt when your initial strategies fail. Because they will. Jin nodded thoughtfully. I'll keep that in mind, Commander. On Earth, in the underground complex of the United Defense Command, Colonel Jackson Weber studied the latest data from the Deep Space Monitoring Network. Something had triggered the quantum fluctuation sensors near Neptune. Something massive. Analysis confirms it, Colonel, reported Major Rika Tanaka. The energy signature matches nothing in our database, but its magnitude suggests an artificial source. We're dealing with a starship, possibly multiple, of unknown origin. Colonel Weber's expression remained calm, though his mind raced through the implications. Humanity had suspected they weren't alone in the galaxy, but direct contact, potentially, hostile contact, had arrived sooner than anyone had expected. Implement First Contact Protocol Alpha, he ordered. Alert all UDC forces worldwide. Bring orbital defense platforms to ready status, but maintain passive scanning only. And brief the Secretary General. The Security Council needs to convene immediately. As his staff carried out his orders, Weber studied the holographic display of the solar system. Humanity had been preparing for this possibility for decades. Theoretical defense strategies against technologically superior extraterrestrial threats, unified planetary defense initiatives, and classified technological developments that had accelerated after the mysterious encounter on Mars 3 years ago. What the aliens couldn't know was that humanity had recovered technology from that encounter. Technology they had been reverse engineering ever since. Major Tanaka, Weber called. Activate Project Prometheus. It's time to see if our adaptations to their technology actually work. Yes, Colonel. The Prometheus squadrons are being prepped now. Weber allowed himself a grim smile. If the aliens were coming with hostile intent, they would soon discover that humanity was not the easy target they might have expected. Aboard the inevitable Victory, alarm sirens blared as the first wave of Imperial vessels prepared to enter Earth's solar system. Commander Voltar stood on the observation deck, watching as the sleek attack ships launched from the carrier's bays. Despite all his warnings, despite all his efforts, the invasion was proceeding exactly according to Zix's flawed plan. As the ships accelerated toward Earth, Voltar felt a cold certainty in his core. The Empire was about to learn a costly lesson in underestimating humanity. He only hoped that enough of his people would survive to learn from it. The Empire's reckoning. Command bridge of the inevitable Victory had fallen silent. General Zix stared at the tactical display in disbelief as the icons representing the first wave of Imperial attack vessels blinked out one after another. What should have been a swift, overwhelming victory had turned into a disaster within hours. How? Zix finally broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. How is this possible? Commander Voltar stood at the back of the bridge, his cybernetic eye recording everything. He had warned them, but even he hadn't anticipated the extent of humanity's capabilities. Status report, Zix demanded, regaining his composure. Captain, Jin stepped forward, her professional demeanor strained. First wave losses currently at 82%, General. The humans deployed previously undetected orbital defense platforms with weapons technology that... She hesitated. That appears similar to our own. Similar to our own? Zix repeated incredulously. That's impossible. They're a pre-unification civilization. Nevertheless, Jin continued, the energy signatures match Imperial pulse cannon technology, albeit modified, and their targeting systems anticipated our evasive algorithms with disturbing accuracy. Voltar moved closer to the tactical display. The Mars incident, he said quietly. They must have recovered technology from my team's vessels and reverse-engineered it. Zix turned on him, eyes blazing. You failed to mention this possibility in your warnings, Commander. I told you they learn and adapt at an exponential rate, Voltar replied evenly. The evidence was in my report. The one you dismissed as the ramblings of a battle-scarred veteran. Before Zix could respond, the tactical officer called out, General, multiple fast-moving objects approaching from Earth, configuration unknown. The bridge view screen activated, showing a swarm of smaller craft rising from Earth's atmosphere. Unlike the orbital defense platforms, these were clearly human-designed, but they moved with impossible speed and agility. What are we looking at? Zix demanded. Analysis suggests fighter craft, Jin replied, studying her console, but they're generating energy fields that shouldn't be possible with their technology level. Project Prometheus, Voltar murmured. recalling intercepted communications. They mentioned this during the Mars incident. I included it in my supplementary reports. The human fighters engaged the remaining Imperial First Wave vessels with devastating effectiveness. They seemed to anticipate every maneuver, countering tactics that had served the Empire for centuries. Recall the second wave, Voltar urged. Regroup and reassess before we commit more forces. For once, Zix didn't argue. Send the recall signal. All vessels return to staging positions. As the surviving Imperial ships retreated, Voltar studied the human fighters with a mixture of dread and admiration. This was exactly the scenario he had feared. Humanity taking Imperial technology and improving upon it in ways the Empire itself had never considered. In the war room of the United Defense Command, Colonel Weber watched the retreat of the alien forces with cautious satisfaction. Project Prometheus exceeded expectations, Major Tanaka reported. Adaptation of the alien shield technology proved effective against their own weapon systems. Weber nodded. And casualties? 23 pilots lost, Tanaka replied grimly. But considering what we were up against, it's a miracle it wasn't worse. Weber studied the holographic display showing the aliens regrouping near Neptune. They'll be back, he said quietly. And they'll adapt to our adaptations. This was just the opening move in a very long game. The Security Council is requesting your assessment and recommendations, Tanaka said. Weber considered for a moment. Tell them we've won the first battle but not the war. We need to accelerate production of Prometheus units and deploy the ground defense systems. And most importantly, we need to prepare for their return with new tactics. As his staff moved to carry out his orders, Weber focused on the largest alien vessel, the apparent command ship that had remained outside the battle zone. What are you planning now? He murmured to himself. Aboard the inevitable Victory, the mood was somber. As General Zix convened an emergency strategy session, the command staff sat in stunned silence as the battle analysis played out on the central display. Our standard tactical protocols were completely ineffective, Jin summarized. The humans anticipated our attack patterns with uncanny accuracy. Because they've studied us, Voltar interjected. The Mars incident gave them a preview of our capabilities and they spent years preparing accordingly. Zix paced the length of the conference table. We still maintain overwhelming numerical and technological superiority. This setback changes nothing. It changes everything, Voltar countered. We must report to the Imperial Council and request additional resources if you insist on continuing this invasion. Zix stopped pacing, his expression hardening. And admit failure? Give the humans time to further prepare? No, Commander. We will adapt our strategy and strike again immediately. With what? Jin asked. The first wave is decimated, and the second wave isn't equipped for the level of resistance we're facing. Then we'll change the rules of engagement, Zix declared. If the humans want to play at war, we'll show them what real war looks like. Prepare the atmospheric dispersal units. A chill ran through Voltar. Atmospheric dispersal? You're proposing chemical warfare against a civilian population? I'm proposing victory by any means necessary, Zix snapped. The Emperor expects results, not excuses. The Emperor expects adherence to the galactic conventions, Voltar reminded him. Chemical warfare against civilian populations is explicitly prohibited. These are not citizens of the Empire, Zix argued. They are unincorporated primitives resisting our rightful expansion. The command staff exchanged uncomfortable glances. Even among the career military officers, there were lines few were willing to cross. I cannot in good conscience support this course of action, Voltar stated firmly, and I believe many others feel the same. Zix's eyes narrowed. Are you advocating for insubordination, Commander? I'm advocating for honor, Voltar replied, something the Empire was founded on before generals like you began placing personal glory above principle. The tension in the room was palpable. Then Captain Jin stood. General, I respectfully request that we consult with the Imperial Council before proceeding with atmospheric dispersal tactics. Several other officers murmured agreement. Zix looked around the room, realizing he was losing control of his command staff. Very well, he conceded through gritted teeth. We will consult with the council, but in the meantime, prepare conventional forces for a coordinated ground assault. We will establish beachheads on multiple continents simultaneously. As the command staff filed out, Voltar remained behind. General, I urge you to reconsider. Ground combat plays directly to human strengths. Their entire military history is built on dominating challenging terrains and repelling technologically superior invaders. Your warnings have been noted, Commander, Zix replied coldly. Now either assist with the operation planning or remove yourself from my command center. With a respectful nod, Voltar turned and left, his mind racing. The general was leading them to disaster, and the council was too distant to intervene in time. He would need to take matters into his own hands. 2 days later, the second wave of the Imperial invasion force descended toward Earth's surface. Unlike the first wave, these ships employed advanced stealth technology, avoiding the orbital defense grid and penetrating deep into the atmosphere before being detected. Colonel Weber received the reports with growing concern. Multiple landing zones confirmed across all continents, Tanaka reported. They're establishing beachheads in remote areas, deserts, mountains, forests. Smart, Weber acknowledged. They're avoiding population centers and establishing forward operating bases in challenging terrain. He studied the tactical map, noting the dispersed pattern of landings. They're trying to stretch our resources thin by forcing us to respond globally. Prometheus squadrons are engaging where possible, Tanaka reported, but their numbers are still limited. Weber nodded grimly. Activate all Special Forces units. Priority is intelligence gathering and asymmetric warfare. We need to understand their ground tactics before committing to major engagements. Around the world, highly trained human special operations teams moved into position, observing the alien forces as they established their beachheads. The aliens were methodical, deploying prefabricated defensive structures and energy shields around their landing zones. What the Imperial forces couldn't know was that every movement, every deployment, every communication frequency was being meticulously recorded and analyzed. Within hours, patterns emerged, weaknesses were identified, and countermeasures developed. Meanwhile, Commander Voltar moved discreetly through the lower decks of the inevitable Victory, making his way to the communication center. Using his command clearance, he entered the secure transmission room and locked the door behind him. He knew what he was about to do would be considered treason by some, but loyalty to the Empire's ideals sometimes required disobeying its current leadership. He established a direct quantum link to the Imperial Council, bypassing the normal chain of command. Commander Voltar to Imperial Council, he began, his voice steady despite the risk he was taking. I am transmitting under emergency protocols to report grave violations of galactic conventions and strategic misconduct by General Zix in the Earth Incorporation operation. He proceeded to detail the catastrophic losses of the first wave, Zix's consideration of chemical warfare, and the ill-conceived ground invasion currently underway. The humans are proving to be exactly the adversary I warned you about, he continued. They've adapted our own technology against us and are demonstrating tactical flexibility that our standard protocols cannot counter. He paused, knowing his next words would seal his fate one way or another. I formally request the Council recall General Zix and appoint alternative leadership for this operation. Furthermore, I strongly urge the Council to consider diplomatic alternatives to military incorporation. The cost in Imperial lives already exceeds any potential benefit from this world's resources. Just as he finished his transmission, the door to the communications room slid open. General Zix stood there, flanked by security officers, his expression cold with fury. Commander Voltar, he said quietly, you are hereby relieved of duty and charged with treason against the Empire. Voltar straightened, making no move to resist as the security officers approached. The Council will receive my transmission, he said simply. The truth cannot be suppressed forever. The truth, Zix spat, is that you have undermined a critical military operation and endangered countless Imperial lives with your interference. No, General, Voltar replied calmly. You endangered those lives when you ignored my warnings and proceeded with an invasion you were unprepared for." As the security officers led him away, Voltar felt a strange sense of peace. He had done what he could to prevent further bloodshed. Now it was up to the Council and the humans. On Earth, the tide had begun to turn. The initial Imperial beachheads had been contained, with human forces employing guerrilla tactics to isolate and degrade the alien positions. The Prometheus fighters had gained air superiority over most landing zones, cutting off supply and reinforcement options. In the UDC war room, Colonel Weber received the latest intelligence with growing confidence. "Their command structure is rigid," he observed, studying the battle reports. "They're following predetermined protocols. Even when those protocols are failing, they're not adapting quickly enough. We've also detected communications disruptions between their ground forces and their command ship," Major Tanaka added. "Something's happening up there," Weber murmured. Then to Tanaka, "What about the new weapon systems? Are they ready for deployment?" "Yes, sir. The Mars cannons are operational and the orbital platforms are in position." Weber nodded, his expression resolute. "Then it's time we showed the Empire exactly what humanity is capable of. Prepare for Operation Thunderbolt." As Earth's forces prepared their counteroffensive, the Imperial Council was receiving Voltar's transmission. The evidence was clear, the tactical analysis sound. Within hours, a quantum communication was sent to the inevitable victory, ordering the immediate cessation of hostilities and the recall of General Zix. But it was too late. Operation Thunderbolt had begun. Across the globe, human forces launched coordinated strikes against the Imperial beachheads. The Mars cannons, massive ground-based weapons reverse-engineered from alien technology, fired in perfect synchronization, their energy beams cutting through Imperial defenses like paper. In orbit, the enhanced Prometheus fighters executed precision strikes against Imperial support vessels, while the orbital platforms targeted the invasion fleet's command ships. By the time the Imperial Council's ceasefire order reached Earth space, the second wave of the invasion force had been decimated. The humans had not only repelled the invasion, they had demonstrated a level of military prowess that earned them a new designation in the Empire's threat assessment protocols. Class A autonomous species, not to be approached without diplomatic overtures and mutual defense agreements. Commander Voltar, released from the brig by officers loyal to the Imperial Council rather than General Zix, stood on the observation deck of the returning Imperial flagship. As he watched the blue-green planet recede in the distance, he felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief that the bloodshed was ending, vindication that his warnings had finally been heeded, and a profound respect for the species that had handed the mighty Zorthan Empire its first major defeat in 8 centuries. "The Council is requesting your presence at the emergency session," Captain Jin informed him, approaching from behind. "They're already discussing a complete overhaul of our first contact protocols." Voltar nodded. "And General Zix?" "Relieved of command and facing court-martial," Jin replied. "The Council was impressed by your foresight." "Not foresight," Voltar corrected her. "Just respect for an adversary. Something we would all do well to remember as we move forward in this galaxy." As the Imperial fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving the Sol system behind, a new chapter in galactic history had begun, one in which humanity would play a far more significant role than anyone had anticipated. The Empire had laughed at Voltar's warnings until it was too late, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. And neither, Voltar suspected, would any other spacefaring civilization that encountered the remarkable species called humans.